The little girl's desperate sobs echoed through the house. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched her tiny puppy, holding him tight against her chest. "Please, please, don't hurt him," she cried out, her small voice trembling with fear. Her stepmother stood over her, a cruel smirk playing on her lips, her hand raised as if to strike. The little puppy whimpered, sensing the danger. The girl squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable, her heart pounding like a drum. Just as the stepmother's hand swung down, the front door burst open with a resounding crash. A tall, imposing figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. It was her father, his face a mask of thunderous rage. He had returned home early from a business trip, a trip his wife had insisted he take. He had a gut feeling something was wrong, a gnawing unease that had followed him for miles. Now, seeing the scene before him, that unease turned into white-hot fury. "What is going on here?" he boomed, his voice shaking the very walls. The stepmother froze, her face instantly draining of color. The smirk vanished, replaced by a look of pure terror. She stammered, trying to conjure up a lie, but the evidence was undeniable. The crying child, the cowering puppy, and her own raised hand told the whole story. Her father, a self-made millionaire who had built his empire from nothing, rushed to his daughter's side. He scooped her and the puppy into his arms, holding them close. "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here. No one is ever going to hurt you or your puppy again," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at his wife, and the love he once felt for her had been replaced by cold, hard steel. This wasn't the first time he'd heard whispers of her cruelty, subtle hints from the nanny, strange comments from his daughter, but he had dismissed them, blinded by what he thought was love. He had trusted this woman with the most precious thing in his life, his child, and she had betrayed that trust in the most despicable way. This single moment was the final straw. It was the catalyst that ripped the blindfold from his eyes, forcing him to see the monster he had married. "Get out," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Get out of my house. Now." The stepmother tried to protest, to weave a web of excuses and apologies, but he wasn't listening. His world had narrowed down to one thing: protecting his daughter. As she scrambled to gather her things, he held his little girl, rocking her gently. He realized with a sickening jolt that this wasn't just about the puppy. This was about a pattern of abuse, a shadow of fear that had been cast over his home while he was away, building his fortune, thinking he was providing for his family. But what he didn't know was that this confrontation was just the beginning. The stepmother wasn't going to leave quietly. She had secrets, and she was prepared to use them to destroy him and take everything he had built. In the days that followed, a bitter battle began. She hired a team of ruthless lawyers, painting him as an absentee father and an unstable parent. She twisted the story, claiming he was the one with the temper, that she was the victim. The media caught wind of the story, and suddenly, his private life was splashed across every tabloid. The man who was once praised for his business acumen was now being vilified as a negligent father. He felt the walls closing in. The empire he had worked so hard to build was at risk. His reputation was in tatters, and worst of all, there was a very real threat that he could lose custody of his daughter. The court battles were grueling. His wife's lawyers brought up every mistake he'd ever made, every late night at the office, every missed school play. They painted a picture of a man who cared more about money than his own child. Doubt began to creep in. Was he a bad father? Had he failed his daughter by not seeing the truth sooner? The weight of it all was crushing. But every time he looked into his daughter's eyes, he found his strength again. He saw the love and trust she had for him, and he knew he had to fight. He couldn't let her down. He hired the best investigators, determined to uncover the truth about his wife's past. And what they found was shocking. It turned out she had a history of manipulation and deceit. She had left a trail of broken lives and financial ruin in her wake. This wasn't her first wealthy husband, and it wasn't the first time she had used a child as a pawn in her twisted games. Armed with his new evidence, he walked back into the courtroom, no longer the beaten-down man but a father fighting for his child's life. He presented the evidence of his wife's long history of fraud and emotional abuse. He brought in witnesses from her past, people she had wronged who were finally ready to speak out. The courtroom was silent as the nanny took the stand, her voice shaking as she recounted the months of subtle cruelty she had witnessed, the taunts, the threats, the isolation his daughter had endured. The final piece of evidence was a secret recording from a hidden camera he had installed after the incident with the puppy. The footage was damning. It showed the stepmother, day after day, berating and threatening the little girl when she thought no one was watching. It showed the pure, unadulterated malice she held for an innocent child. The courtroom watched in stunned silence. The stepmother's carefully constructed facade crumbled into dust. There was no denying the truth anymore. The judge's verdict was swift and decisive. The father was granted full and sole custody of his daughter. The stepmother was not only stripped of any claim to his fortune, but also faced legal consequences for her actions. As the gavel fell, a wave of relief washed over him. He knelt and hugged his daughter, who had been waiting anxiously outside the courtroom. "It's over, my love," he said, tears of joy streaming down his face. "We're safe now." Walking out of the courthouse, hand in hand with his daughter, with her little puppy trotting happily beside them, he felt like he could finally breathe again. He had lost a fortune in legal fees, and his business had taken a hit. But none of that mattered. He had saved his daughter. He had won the only battle that ever truly mattered. From that day on, he restructured his life. He sold off parts of his business, delegated responsibilities, and made a promise to himself and to his daughter that he would always be there, that he would never let anything or anyone hurt her again. Their broken house slowly became a home again, filled not with fear and shadows, but with laughter, love, and the happy barks of a little puppy who had, in his own way, saved them all. This story is a powerful reminder that a parent's love is the strongest force on earth. It shows that, no matter how dark things seem, fighting for what's right is always worth it. Thank you for watching this incredible story unfold. If it touched your heart, please hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional and powerful content. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.